Hello and welcome back to Ruben Uncut. Yes, I'm doing two movie reviews back to back. Dear most consistent listeners. And before I begin this review, I encourage you to go listen to my other review for The Creator, and then go watch The fucking Creator. It's one of the best movies of the year, and it is a fucking travesty that people aren't going to see it. Now, to be fair, it's only opening weekend. Maybe it'll have good legs. You better get out there and give it some good legs. Like, everybody says they want new shit, but no one's willing to pay for new shit. Very distressing, American audiences. Very distressing. Fortunately, the movie only cost a spectacularly, unbelievably affordable $80 million. We'll see if it can make that back. Hopefully it can. Just so everyone knows, that's typically roughly around 190 million to break even on an $80 million budget. Now, these things vary a lot, and studios do wonky shit with their numbers, and also frequently have tie-ins or cross promotions that help pay for the movie's budget, a la Man of Steel. But we're not here to talk about any of those things, other than the fact that you should definitely go see The Creator before you see the movie that I'm about to talk about now. What is that movie? Expend4bles. I'm sorry, Expendables 4 is how it claims that it is pronounced, but I will call it by its written name, Expend4bles. No, I'm not going to stick to that. It's actually, I have to slow down and say it. So we're going to move right along. So, yeah. How do I feel about Expendables 4? I actually don't entirely know how to feel about Expendables 4, because in many ways, it is the worst put together of the Expendables movies. However, it's significantly less boring than at least two Expendable movies, those ones being 1 and 3. I would say that all the good Expendables are even numbers. However, only Expendables 2 is actually worth watching, from what I can tell. I haven't rewatched the other movies recently, but going based on my loose memories, none of the movies managed to succeed being any more memorable than, Jean-Claude Van Damme roundhouse kicking a knife into Liam Hemsworth's chest. Definitely remember that moment. A lot better than I remember a lot of the other Expendables movies. But ultimately, it was the performance of Jean-Claude Van Damme as the villain in combination with the wide array of superstars that made it entertaining. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Some of you may not know what the Expendables are. Well, this is where we start to see the steady decline of the Expendables franchise. Because what was the Expendables about? Well, the Expendables wasn't about anything. The Expendables was an excuse to essentially do the big movie action star version of a supergroup. To put a whole bunch of 90s action stars with a couple early 2000s stars into the same movie and see where it went, and hope that audiences really wanted that. For years, boomers and Gen Xers have been complaining about how Hollywood doesn't make 90s action style movies anymore. Now, to be fair, we don't make 90s style action movies anymore, because cinema has advanced considerably since then. Although in fairness, not all in good ways. The over-reliance on CGI is a problem. Remember I said that. And remember that was actually a previous complaint about contemporary action movies versus 90s action movies. So the first Expendables got together pretty much everybody. Almost everybody. Steven Seagal and Jackie Chan have not appeared in any of these movies, even though there were rumors of Jackie Chan and actually fans hugely wanting Jackie Chan to appear in one or more of these movies. Jackie Chan has yet to do that. We assume that Steven Seagal is not in any of these movies because who would want to work with Steven Seagal? I mean, he sounds like the worst person you can possibly work with. But the franchise initially did start off with people like Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger. To be fair, some of them not as big of parts as others. Sylvester Stallone, Terry Crews, technically one of the early 2000s guys, Jason Statham, Dolph Lundgren, Randy Couture for some reason, and a couple people who are normally villains. The first movie had Eric Roberts. The second movie had Jean-Claude Van Damme. The third movie had Mel Gibson as the villain, and also added the addition of Antonio Banderas, which honestly were nice additions to maintaining that whole super group, get all the action stars in one movie type vibe that the franchise was originally going for. However, this aspect that was the original core concept of the franchise to be a super group of action stars started to slip away almost immediately. With the second movie injuring Terry Crews' character right out the door, and Jet Li's character only appearing in the opening action sequence. This was a sign of more things to come, as slowly they lost more and more 90s action stars, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, and to a less surprising extent, Bruce Willis, because apparently, Bruce Willis was hard to work with, and it's not surprising Bruce Willis is not in the fourth movie because, well, degenerative brain diseases. So that's not really anybody's fault. However, it is worth noting that Expendables 3 tried to be PG-13, and fans didn't care for that, although it looks like that movie at least did better at the box office than Expendables 4 is doing. Expendables 2 brought in new characters, many of whom were not in Expendables 3. Expendables 3 brought in new characters, many of whom are not in Expendables 4, including Ronda Rousey. Now, to be fair, Megan Fox, regardless of what you think about her, is a better actor than Ronda Rousey. No offense to Ronda Rousey. So, yeah. So that brings us to this movie, Expendables 4. So what does the cast look like now in Expendables 4? Who are the exciting additions? Well, I'm glad you asked. First of all, you should be aware that, for starters, Antonio Banderas, sadly not in this one, but there is a character who is supposed to be his son. And honestly, he's kind of the comedic relief of the group. And, you know, even though he doesn't really have much important to say and is basically there for laughs, is very likable. Someone at some point in the development set of the fourth movie was like, hey, what if we actually gave Randy Couture more things to do as an actor in these movies? Unfortunately, the things they thought to give Randy Couture more to do in the movie is to pack his dialogue full of clunky expositional dialogue. And I can't help but feel that Randy Couture probably the worst person to give that to in the cast, seeing as how it takes a pretty good actor to handle those types of clunky exchanges. How clunky is the expositional dialogue in this movie? It's pretty bad. It's not as bad as Joss Whedon's version of Justice League, which has some of the worst expositional dialogue I've ever heard in a movie in my entire life. But Whedon's good at dialogue. Sure, he was. Probably was. Dolph Lundgren is back. Sylvester Stallone is back. Although, this is a big spoiler. He's barely in the movie, which is a problem because right off the bat of this movie, its strongest thing it has going for it is Sylvester Stallone's chemistry with Jason Statham and the rest of the cast. So the fact that he's in pretty much the first act of the movie, and that's almost it, is doesn't help the movie at all. Although, to be fair, this decision was probably made for financial reasons. We'll get into story stuff in a minute, and there will be spoilers. So if this was a movie you didn't want spoiled, I'm going to spoil it. I'm going to spoil the shit out of this movie. The other new additions here are Andy Garcia. It's an interesting choice. I don't actually remember Andy Garcia being in a lot of action movies, but hey, he is a famous 90s actor, so maybe that's something to do with it. And I'm probably going to mispronounce this gentleman's name, but Iko Uwais, who who some of you may recognize as the main guy from The Raid. He actually does a really good job here as essentially for most of the movie, the main villain that we're talking to. Now, there is, quote unquote, Ocelot, who is the real main villain, who he is the henchman to. His character's name is Ramat. But Ramat, played by Aiko here, does a really good job. And interestingly enough, his accent is not, he has almost no accent, especially compared to Tony Jaa, who has a pretty thick accent in the movie. Tony Jaa plays a good guy named Desha, who starts out in this movie as a man on a journey of peace who takes up revenge when he realizes, when he finds out that, well, I won't get into that yet. I won't get into the heavy spoilers for another minute. Dolph Lundgren is back. Dolph Lundgren is, honestly, I like Dolph Lundgren. He's probably the smartest person in the cast, what with his degrees and high IQ, although I'm not a big supporter of IQ tests. But he seems like a genuinely nice and smart guy. Now, in the movie, I have to say this, almost all the character stuff in this movie is given to Jason Statham. Jason Statham gets almost all the character development, but Dolph Lundgren at least gets a little bit of character development in the fact that at the beginning of the movie, we find out that Dolph Lundgren is now sober. His character's name is Gunnar. They're the sniper of the team. How original of a name. And Gunnar, at the beginning of the movie, everyone's making fun of him for wearing glasses. And then he seems to be having trouble sniping people because of glasses. However, it turns out it's not the glasses, it's because he doesn't know how to shoot people sober. Of course, by the end of the movie, he's drinking again, so he can shoot people. Which, like, just a think about that character arc for a minute. Like, what the fuck is that? Another, I don't believe he was in the third movie. I believe this is where they added him. 50 Cent is in the movie. And 50 Cent clearly, script-wise, while not replacing the character, is clearly a replacement for Terry Crews on the team. And that just... Even Wesley Snipes in the third movie was a better choice. But 50 Cent... Side note, you couldn't afford to get Wesley Snipes back? It seems like he'd be affordable at this point. But 50 Cent is just, God bless him, he's trying his best, but like, he is absolutely no substitute for an actor as talented as Terry Crews. He's just not. Also, it's not as believable when he grabs a person and starts flinging them around like a rag doll as when Terry Crews does it. I know, 50 Cent, you're not a small dude, but it does look less convincing than when Terry Crews does it. Which, of course, brings us to Megan Fox. Megan Fox is both a member of the team and also Jason Statham's love interest, which is a bold choice. The cast also includes another member who joins in the middle of the movie, named Lash, who is played by Levi Tran. Tran? I don't know. But she does a pretty good job. And she also sort of, as the movie goes on, becomes a love interest for Randy Couture, which is a choice. Now, I can't remember if I said this already, but I don't know how to feel about this movie. And the reason I don't know how to feel about this movie is, like I said, it's never boring, but it's also the sloppiest of, it might be the sloppiest of the movies. I'd have to go watch them to be sure, but like, the movie starts off like kind of fucking questionable right away, which is the fact that I think that the chronological editing of the movie does not make sense. The opening sequence, of course, we're introduced to the moment sort of the pivotal moment of the villains raiding a Libyan military base. Okay, I will give this movie props for one thing. The brown people aren't bad guys in it. The Libyans are the good guys, and the bad guys, they're definitely white, but we're not really sure what faction they're with. For most of the movie, it becomes clear at the end. But, and this is the thing, immediately after that first sequence, we then go to Barney, aka Sylvester Stallone, going to see Christmas, aka Jason Statham, and convincing him to come to a bar to help him get his Expendables ring back. Which, okay. However, the problem is that that scene should be the first scene of the movie. It absolutely should. Because otherwise, the timeline doesn't make sense. Actually, the timeline still doesn't make sense. Somehow, these terrorists raid this Libyan military base to get these nuclear detonators. However, somehow the Expendables are able to fly there, even though the implication from the editing is that that started before the bar fight scene and before their briefing scene. And this would not even be a hard thing to fix. You just give a line of dialogue where someone's like, our sources indicate that they're going to attack this base in Libya. Then we cut to them attacking the base in Libya and the plane showing up. Because otherwise, we're supposed to believe that like they were raiding this place for like what, 6 hours? I don't know how long it takes to fly to Libya from America. No, yeah, no, it would take roughly. Okay, it says that these are flights with 2 stops each, but with a regular airplane, it would take 21 hours and 10 minutes or 20 hours and 30 minutes. Now, I assume they don't have to stop, except they probably would have to at least refuel over the ocean before they could get to Libya. So, like, how long does it take to raid one Libyan base? Like, you'd think the Libyan army at some point would be like, hey, has anyone heard from that base in 24 hours? Like, it doesn't. And even if we assume that they went straight there, like, how much time can we take off of these commercial flights for a straight flight to Libya? I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. Because I am looking at commercial flight times, which would be different. Okay. Oh, never mind. I found it. A commercial airliner doing 500 miles per hour would reach Libya in roughly 13 hours and 12 minutes. So yeah, it takes them longer than that to get there after the mission has started. I don't think that makes sense in any way. Also, the scene right before the bar fight, they edit Barney like in the middle of his line. It's pretty sloppy, but the editing is honestly not great. In fact, here's a big thing. Here's a pro. The fight scenes have clearly taken inspiration from the choreography of movies like John Wick. Con, they don't shoot it like or edit it like John Wick. It is choppy, jumpy, unstable cameras all over the goddamn place. Is it as bad as a Paul Greengrass movie? No. It's much more watchable. It's much more visually watchable than a Jason Bourne movie. Thank God. I would have gotten a migraine. And I don't normally get migraines, except when I'm watching a Paul Greengrass movie. That gives me a migraine. Oh, hideous filmmaker. I'm sorry, that makes it sound like I'm attacking his looks. I'm attacking the look of his movies. Buy a steady cam, you lazy bitch. Hideous. So glad Paul Greengrass didn't get to make the Watchmen movie. So glad. So glad. 100% glad that that did not happen. I'm getting sidetracked. Where was I? Right. So the action sequences are well choreographed, but they're shot typically and mediocrely for movies that we've already seen massive improvements in the filming of these types of movies, and this movie does not appear to have picked up on that, despite the fact that the choreography for fights clearly has. Why was I never bored? Well, that's a great question because my lack of boredom certainly wasn't the script's doing. The script is painfully generic. And unbelievably obvious. I called almost every twist in the movie. Now, there was one part of the movie where they felt there was a moment where I thought I had predicted wrong, and that the movie was about to go into a finale, a conclusion, an end to cap off the franchise, and that would have turned this movie around for me. I will not lie. That would have made me go, well, that makes it worth seeing for fans. And maybe this movie is still worth seeing for fans of the Expendables series. But I'm not done complaining. Because the most standout, terrible part of the movie, besides its incredibly borderline nonsensical and yet overly cliched script, it's got to be the CGI. Real bad CGI. And also, like, can we stop doing CGI blood? It doesn't look good. And it especially doesn't look good here. What happened to blood packs? Is there a reason we don't do that anymore? Like, what the hell? Where what happened to the squibs that would pop blood out of the actors? Where is that? Because this CGI blood stuff looks like shit. The other thing is the movie, is it really the other thing is the movie, there are clear moments where they are CGIing stuff that makes you go, why are you CGIing this? Is it really cheaper to CGI a plane than to film flying one? Is it cheaper to CGI a boat that you already have a physical version of? Like, the CGI is not good. In fact, arguably, this is the most annoying. This CGI. Imagine if the CGI quality of the babies, the beginning of the Flash movie, were extended to all the CGI in a movie. That's what we're looking at here. The CGI in this movie is not good. It's very cheap looking CGI. I just saw The Creator, which was somehow made for $80 million, and the CGI, it never looks CGI, even though that uses extensive CGI. So much so that in The Creator, there were a lot of people where they did not tell the actors if they were playing robots or humans. And yet, they CGI'd out a lot of those humans as robots effectively. This movie can't make a plane look real. This movie can't make a car chase look real. This movie can't make CGI look real. It's in a year of incredibly bland CGI. I actually think this one had the most ugh to it. It just looks cheap. Where other movies looked rushed or like they didn't have time, look rushed like they didn't have time to complete it. Expendables 4 looks like they just didn't want to spend money on it, which is, a problem. So why wasn't I bored? Well, the answer is Jason Statham. Jason Statham carries this movie on his back. Like he is the turtle of American Indian folklore who carries the world on his back. Like he is fucking Atlas. Jason Statham carries this movie on his back. Now, to be fair, like I said, the cast is relatively good. If this movie has any strength at all, it is the chemistry of its cast. Now, to be fair, there are some odd ducks out in that chemistry. 50 Cent. But handfuls of the characters have solid chemistry with each other. Even Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren has good chemistry as well, despite the fact that there are a couple scenes where he is not being shot in the best light. Glares at director, glaring at director intensifies. So, if you don't want spoilers for this movie, and I don't know why you would give a shit about me ruining this movie, we're about to go into the actual story of the movie, which is generic and bland. When the credits for this movie rolled, I saw the names that had written the movie. When I saw the names who had written the movie, I suddenly understood why a lot of it didn't make sense. And by that, I don't mean that when I saw the names, I was suddenly like, the all those plot points make more sense now. No, 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 no. What I mean is, I suddenly realized why vast parts of the movie didn't make sense. And the reason was that the movie was written by Kurt Wimmer. I assume that's how his name is pronounced. You may be asking yourself, who's Kurt Wimmer? Well, I'm glad you asked, because Kurt Wimmer is a writer and director in Hollywood who is best known for the terrible movies that he directed. What movies did he direct? Well, first of all, he directed Equilibrium. Now, I know some of you go, but dude, Equilibrium's a cult classic. Equilibrium is trash. Equilibrium is a dumb version of Fahrenheit 451, and is a movie that is being entirely carried on the back of Christian Bale. If Christian Bale wasn't such a goddamn good actor, Equilibrium would have been forgotten trash by now. It's not good. Of course, Equilibrium, though, at least is significantly better than his follow-up film, Ultraviolet, which is quite possibly one of the worst action movies I have ever seen. Kurt Wimmer is the moron who came up. He wrote and directed both these movies, by the way. Kurt Wimmer is the moron who came up with Gun Kata. What is Gun Kata, you might say? Now, the fans of Equilibrium are going, oh, Ruben, Gun Kata is awesome. How dare you talk slander on Gun Kata? Gun Kata is stupid. Gun Kata is one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever seen in a goddamn movie. Gun Kata does not make any sense. Let's explore what Gun Kata is. Okay, what is a kata? Well, the term kata comes from karate, and essentially it refers to a series of pre-scripted movements that help train your body to be in a physical fight. Gun kata is a number of pre-scripted shooting angles and stances that are meant to be used in a real fight, except that this is not how any gunfight would ever work. What you're going to use a preset directions to be shooting it. Now, I understand that the reason the film did this because it was a low budget way to get around the fact that it couldn't visually compete with The Matrix, a movie it desperately wanted to be. But Gun Kata doesn't make sense. You're going to walk into a room and stand in one place and choose which random angles, well, not random, pre-chosen angles you're going to shoot in, and that's going to somehow hit people. Kurt Wimmer had this really weird action movie idea, which was the idea of people standing in like the center of everyone fighting them and somehow being able to fight all those people. And it looks bad. It looks worse than Ultraviolet, and technically he's doing the same thing in Equilibrium with Gun Kata. Typically, shooting guns relies on things like fucking aiming and following a moving target. And the idea that you could just walk into a room and shoot at predetermined angles and you would kill everyone in the room, that is literally one of the most nonsensically stupid things I have ever heard of. And that's the guy who wrote this movie, with two other dudes who wrote shit I've never heard of. Oh, he also directed the 2020 version of The Children of the Corn, which I haven't seen, but I hear it's terrible. His writing career continues on, doing things like adapting Sphere, The Thomas Crown Affair. Honestly, probably the most high-profile script on this list. Of course, he wrote Equilibrium, The Recruit, Ultraviolet, the screenplay for Street Kings, although I'm pretty sure, I think it's based on a story by someone else, Law Abiding Citizen, Salt, the remake of Total Recall, which once again is a movie that movie literally has one scene in it that ruins the entire movie. And I'm just like, what? It's terrible. Like, I'm not going to go into that. Oh, he also wrote the remake of Point Break. He wrote the screenplay for that Children of the Corn movie and a couple other movies that I don't know what they are. Doesn't matter. The point is, Kurt Wimmer is one of the most insanely fail upwards people in Hollywood. He is so bizarrely untalented. It maybe he has managed to pump out a few half dozen decent scripts. Actually, this list probably includes fewer than a half dozen decent scripts. It is quite an embarrassing list of credits, to be honest. Oh, it's also written by one of the guys who did that Extraction movie. You know, the one with Chris Hemsworth, the least popular movie directed by the Russo brothers that somehow still got a sequel, despite the fact that its IMDb score is a 4.1. The same movie. Oh no, this is a different Extraction movie starring Bruce Willis and some young dude I don't know. Oh, that's Kellen Lutz. He's still acting. The point is that the caliber of writing here is not great. Who's the movie directed by, you might ask? It's a great question because it's not directed very well. It's directed by a man named Scott Waugh. Now, there's a Roman numeral next to his name, which tells me that there might be more than one Scott Waugh on IMDb. And what has he directed? Well, he hasn't directed a whole lot. He's directed about 6 movies, most of which are some type of variation on a military movie. Things like something called Hidden Strike. Oh, wait, I've heard of Hidden Strike. Is this the movie I think it is? Oh, yeah, no, it's the Jackie Chan, John Cena movie. I do want to see that, but now that I know this guy directed it, I have exceptionally low expectations. The only one of Scott Waugh's movies I have seen is the adaptation of, well, I mean, besides this movie, of course, is the adaptation of the Need for Speed video game. And the only movie I remember of his that I've seen is the trailer for the Need for Speed movie, video game adaptation, which I've seen, and I don't remember a single thing about it. Well, that's not true. I don't remember anything about it that wasn't in the trailer. But I've put off the spoilerinos long enough because let's get right down into it. What are the spoilerinos? Well, here's the story for you, okay? The movie opens up. We got terrorists attacking the Libyan base to steal their nuclear detonators, which apparently takes them forever to get their hands on. In fact, it takes roughly, 12 or 13, takes roughly around 14 hours for them to finally get their hands on those things. And of course, right as they're about to get their hands on them, the Expendables show up to try and wreck their world. However, the mission goes pretty poorly. And the plane that Sylvester Stallone is driving during the sequence is shot down. It's worth noting, Sylvester Stallone almost has no action scenes in this movie. Sylvester Stallone is barely involved with any fight scenes. He literally just sort of flips a dude over a bar, and that is the extent of his action sequence involvement, unless you count flying the plane. Oh, no, he does shoot one guy, but we'll get to that. But so while they're trying to stop this guy, he shoots down Sylvester Stallone's character. And Sylvester Stallone's character does indeed appear to be very dead. My first thought was, well, this is clearly a budgetary choice. The franchise cannot continue with Sylvester Stallone because he's too expensive. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the reason he's not in any fight scenes is probably because that would have meant he had to be on set longer to learn choreography, and that would have made him cost more money. So they show up there. Sylvester Stallone's character seemingly dies. Jason Statham's character vaguely blames himself because Jason Statham's character gives up pursuit of the nuclear detonators in the vain hope that he can save Barney, aka Sylvester Stallone. However, Christmas cannot save Barney. Yes, their names are Christmas and Barney. I don't know. It is worth noting this is the only movie not written by Sylvester Stallone. And I'm not gonna lie, like none of the other movies is super memorable as far as writing goes. But I do feel like, Sylvester Stallone is a better writer than Kurt Wimmer. I mean, for God's sakes, he at least got nominated for an Oscar for script writing because he wrote Rocky and a number of other movies that he appeared in. The point is, though, is that Sylvester Stallone neither directed nor wrote this movie, and you can tell the dip in quality, which is interesting because you didn't think about the quality in the previous movies because it was like, oh yeah, no, it's just fun trash. But the step down makes the relative difference in quality noticeable. Although I should go back and watch those and see how well they've aged. But the point is, script is not good. We're losing. So basically, they come back, and Jason Statham blames himself, and everyone else is mad. And Jason Statham gets kicked off the team for not securing the nuclear detonators. And then something interesting happens. The new team is assembled, and of course, it adds the girl Lash and Megan Fox's character to the team. Megan Fox honestly doesn't do too bad in this movie, and neither does Miss Tran. Their characters are entertaining. And while I don't know if I'd say I believe the chemistry between Megan Fox and Jason Statham, it's certainly not the worst chemistry I've ever seen between action stars. Also, I do think it's really funny that I don't know if Jason Statham is still with this woman, but it is really funny that Jason Statham's previous girlfriend, they might still be together, I honestly don't know, replaced Megan Fox in Transformers 3. And now here, Megan Fox's character is dating Jason Statham's character. I think that's amusing on a meta level, even though, when you think about acting, it doesn't really mean anything. Where was I? Right. So they kick Jason Statham off the team, and the new team goes. Now, one of the things that made my brain immediately go, what the fuck, was that in the briefing room, before they go on the mission, they are specifically told by a CIA official that this mission is off the books so that it can be readily deniable by the US government. And then we're told that CIA agent Marsh, played by Andy Garcia, is going on the mission with them, despite the fact that him being on the mission would tie the mission to the CIA and the US government. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense at all. Now, the problem is that this is a thing that is explained later in the script. However, it is the type of thing that within the context of the universe, why did no one in the room think it was weird? Someone in the room should have thought it was weird because it doesn't make it does not make logistical sense. What I'm saying is someone should have figured out that Andy Garcia is the real bad guy. I mean, that should have been clear. That should have been really obvious from this point, because it is really obvious. I knew it was him. I was very early on in the movie. I called two things: either the main bad guy is Sylvester Stallone, which I doubted because I felt like that would alienate the fan base, or it's Andy Garcia's character. One of the two of them. Clearly, this villain named Ocelot. It did turn out to be Andy Garcia, though, in a very, very predictable turn of events. Yeah. Where was I? Right. So anyways, they kick Jason Statham's character off of the team. So, of course, the first team gets kidnapped. Basically, it's a trap. They get captured. Jason Statham, though, he's on his way. He stops over in Thailand to pick up Tony Jaa's character named Deshay. Oh, Desha, I think is what they call him. I can't remember. It's something like that. But he picks him up, and then they go, to the ship. And then there's a final act where it all takes place on a boat. Why? Because they probably had an affordable option to have a boat to film things on. And so the final action sequence play out. And actually, honestly, this is the most entertaining part of the movie. It's just a lot of action on a boat, including a scene where Jason Statham drives a motorcycle with machine guns on it all over the boat. Not bad. One of the more amusing moments in the movie. Oh, by the way, when Jason Statham initially gets fired, he gets a new job as a bodyguard for a internet influencer, and that sequence ends with him assaulting the internet influencer. And in one of the easily the best comedic bits in the movie, we see a group of the terrorists watching the video where Jason Statham is assaulting the internet influencer as they talk in what appears to be Russian about how awesome he is and how they really hope they get a chance to meet him. He proceeds to then come up behind them and cut all their throats. Be careful what you wish for is the lesson here. But of course, it all boils down, and they've got the bomb on the ship because they're trying to start World War III with the Russians. How timely. And Andy Garcia gets outed. There's some fight scenes that aren't shot as well as they are choreographed. And then just when we think that Andy Garcia does an insane thing, which is that he throws the kill switch for the bomb off the ship, even though he is within inside the range of the blast, and fully believes that they can inflate an inflatable ship fast enough to get away. I find that hard to believe. But anyways, the movie almost tricked me here. There's a moment where it feels like Jason Statham is going to sacrifice himself heroically. And for a moment, I was like, is this the last Expendables movie? Is it possible that this poorly CGI'd, cliche-ridden mess will end on a good storytelling note of sacrifice? Will it? No, it doesn't. Sylvester Stallone shows up at the last minute, blows away Andy Garcia with a giant machine gun mounted to a helicopter, and rescues Jason Statham's character. And the ship explodes outside the range of Russia. No harm, no foul. Everything works out. And then turns out Sylvester Stallone faked his death. How did he fake his death? Well, you see, at the beginning of the movie, he loses a thumb wrestling contest to a little guy who takes his ring, who he refers to as Jumbo Shrimp. And then he has Jason Statham try and get his ring back. Well, turns out what happens is that Sylvester Stallone kidnaps this guy named Jumbo Shrimp and puts him in the plane to die in his place. Which, that's a really, it's kind of an immorally fucked up ending. Final reveal there, So how do I feel about Expendables 4? I have no fucking idea. On the plus side, like I said, it's significantly less boring than the first movie or the third movie, but it's also the cheapest looking of the movies and the least well put together, and also one that feels behind the times now. I honestly don't think I could recommend this movie to anyone who isn't a diehard Expendables fan or a diehard Jason Statham fan, who is, once again, this man is carrying the movie on his back. His performance is what kept me from being bored throughout the movie. His character actually got something akin to character development. Now, to be fair, that character development was meaningless because Sylvester Stallone wasn't dead. But other than that, yeah, no, this is, unless you love Jason Statham or you love this franchise, for the love of God, go see the creator instead. Thank you for listening to Ruben Uncut. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow on Spotify and like and subscribe on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Also, you can email the show at rubenuncut@gmail.com. I'm Jason Statham, and I think you should go to see the creator as well. Sorry, I just wanted to get a Jason Statham impersonation in here before we left. I'm Jason Statham.